Derek's voice carried through the conference room wall 2 minutes before the board meeting started, and one sentence told me he'd already decided my career was over. She's been erratic since the accident. We can manage without her signature on the Meridian filing. My business partner of 9 years, talking about me like I was a liability to be quietly removed. I didn't walk in. I stood in the hallway with my coffee going cold in my hand and listened to the man I'd trusted with half my firm plan, how to erase me from a bridge project I'd designed alone. I didn't confront him that day. That was the mistake he never recovered from. My name is Naomi Reyes. I'm 44, a licensed structural engineer, and for 9 years I co-owned Reyes and Callahan with Derek Callahan, a firm we'd built from a 2-desk office above a print shop into something that had our names on 3 overpasses and a transit bridge. 6 months earlier, a car had run a red light and hit mine broadside. I'd spent 11 weeks recovering from a shattered pelvis, working from my kitchen table on painkillers I hated, dialing into meetings I could barely stay awake for. What I had left to lose was everything: my license, my name on the Meridian Crossing Bridge, and the firm my father had helped me start with a small business loan he co-signed before he died. Looking back, the signs had been there since my second week home. Derek stopped forwarding me the structural review emails, telling me he didn't want to add stress to my recovery. My calculations for the Meridian load distribution went through a final formatting pass before submission, something we'd never done in 9 years of partnership. A junior engineer named Priya mentioned, almost in passing, that Derek had asked her to redo one of my stress diagrams for consistency, and something about the way she said it made me go quiet on the phone. Then there was the county filing itself, which I hadn't been asked to review before it went out, though every prior submission in 9 years had carried both our signatures side by side. I told myself I was being paranoid, that pain medication was making me suspicious of a man who'd stood beside me at my father's funeral. I was wrong to doubt what I was seeing. The morning I overheard him in the hallway, I went home and pulled the Meridian filing from the county's public portal instead of asking Derek for it. My signature was on page 14, beside the final load calculations. I hadn't touched that document in 5 weeks. I hadn't signed anything since the accident. Someone had reproduced my signature, digitally, on a filing that certified the structural integrity of a bridge that would carry 40,000 vehicles a day. This wasn't a business dispute anymore. This was forgery on a public safety document with my license number attached to it. I didn't call Derek, I called Rosalind Chen, an attorney who specialized in professional licensing and had once given a guest lecture at my engineering program on liability. I told her everything, and she asked one question that reframed the entire situation for me. Naomi, do you have the original file metadata, or only the county's printed copy? I didn't know what that meant yet, but I was about to learn. Over the next 3 weeks, I became 2 people. One version of me sat across from Derek at partner meetings, nodding along to his plans for a groundbreaking ceremony, asking polite questions about contractor schedules. The other version spent her evenings building a file. I requested the original digital submission logs from the county clerk's office, which showed the document had been uploaded from an IP address inside our own building at 9:47 p.m. A Tuesday I had documentation, placing me at a physical therapy appointment 40 minutes away. I pulled the firm's internal server history, which still logged file access even after Derek thought he'd cleaned it. I found the original stress diagram Priya had reformatted, with her initial notes still in the metadata, time-stamped and unedited from what I'd sent her. I subpoenaed nothing yet. I simply gathered what already existed, screenshot by screenshot, timestamp by timestamp, and sent copies each week to Rosalind, who stored them somewhere Derek couldn't reach. Derek, meanwhile, grew confident in a way that told me he believed he'd already won. He scheduled the Meridian Crossing ribbon cutting for a Friday in March, inviting the County Transportation Board, 2 local news stations, and the mayor. He asked me, almost as an afterthought, whether I'd feel up to attending, given everything I'd been through. I told him I wouldn't miss it. He smiled like a man accepting a concession. What he didn't know was that Rosalind had already filed a formal complaint with the state licensing board 3 days earlier, and that a forensic document examiner had confirmed what I already suspected. My signature on page 14 was a vector trace lifted from a 2019 permit application, resized, and dropped onto a document I'd never seen. The ribbon cutting happened on a clear, cold morning with the bridge deck gleaming behind a row of folding chairs and a podium with a county seal on it. Derek stood at the microphone in a new suit, thanking the board, thanking the contractors, thanking the team, a phrase he used instead of my name 3 separate times while I sat in the second row. He'd forgotten, or never fully understood, that the county transportation director was seated 4 feet from me, and that Rosalind had submitted the licensing board's findings to the county that same week, timed to arrive the morning of the ceremony. When the transportation director stood to speak, she thanked the firm, then paused and asked, in front of the cameras, whether Mr. Callahan could clarify a discrepancy the board's office had flagged in the final structural certification, specifically regarding the signature, dated during a period when Miss Reyes's own medical records showed her out of state at a rehabilitation facility. Derek's face didn't move for a full 2 seconds. That was the sentence that changed the entire ceremony. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't sign that filing, I said. I have documentation showing where I was that day, and I have a forensic report confirming the signature was digitally reproduced from an unrelated document. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is falsification of a public safety filing, and I'd like it corrected before this bridge opens to traffic. The cameras were rolling. Nobody in that row of folding chairs said a word. Derek tried to laugh it off first, telling the director it was a clerical mix-up, but the licensing board's letter, already in her hands, used the word forgery twice. Within the hour, county engineers had ordered an independent structural review of Meridian Crossing before allowing it to open, not because my work was flawed, but because the certifying signature couldn't be trusted, and neither, by extension, could the process behind it. The review, completed 6 weeks later, confirmed every calculation I'd made was sound. The falsified signature, however, was enough to trigger a state investigation into Derek individually. The aftermath moved faster than I expected. The licensing board suspended Derek's certification pending a full hearing. 2 of our largest municipal contracts, which required both partners' active licenses, were paused, then quietly reassigned to firms without an open investigation attached to their name. Derek resigned from the partnership within a month. Not gracefully, but because our operating agreement, the one my father had insisted we draft carefully 9 years earlier, gave me the right to force a buyout under proven cause. I didn't have to raise my voice once through any of it. I let the paper trail do what paper trails do when they're accurate and complete. I kept the firm. I renamed it Reyes Structural, and Priya, the junior engineer who'd flagged the reformatted diagram without fully realizing what she was flagging, is now my associate partner. The Meridian Crossing Bridge opened 4 months later than planned, with my name alone on the final certification, exactly where it should have been from the beginning. I don't think about Derek with much anger anymore. Mostly I think about the 11 weeks I spent recovering, certain I was imagining things, certain that trusting my own read of the situation would make me look unstable rather than careful. I was careful. I was right. And I've learned that being underestimated while you're hurting isn't a weakness. It's sometimes the only cover you have to do the quiet work of protecting what's actually yours. If you were in my place, would you have confronted him the moment you overheard that hallway conversation, or would you have waited, the way I did, until you had proof strong enough that no one in the room could argue with it? Tell me what city you're watching from tonight. I read every comment. New stories like this one every day, so subscribe if you don't want to miss what comes next.